Karen let her kids destroy my yard. Then she started stealing my mail. The whole thing started because I asked her kids to stay off my lawn. That was it. My house sits on a corner lot, which means I have a slightly larger front yard than most people in the neighborhood. I'd spent a lot of time turning it into something I was proud of. Along the walkway to the front door, I had planted a long flower bed, roses near the porch, lavender along the middle, and some seasonal flowers toward the sidewalk. It wasn't anything extravagant, but it took time and effort. Karen's kids treated it like a playground. They ran across my lawn constantly, digging little holes with sticks and plastic toys. At first it was small stuff, footprints across the grass, a few bent flowers. I tried to be patient. Kids are kids. But then one afternoon I came home from work and found half the flower bed torn apart. The kids had dug trenches through the dirt like they were building a miniature construction site. Several plants had been pulled completely out of the ground. That was when I went next door. Karen answered the door with the same overly cheerful smile she always had. I politely asked if she could keep the kids from playing in my yard. I even showed her the damage. Her smile disappeared immediately. "They're just kids," she said. "You shouldn't expect them to understand property lines." I told her I understood that, but I still needed them to stay out of my yard. She rolled her eyes and closed the door. The next day, the kids were back. That's when I filed a complaint with the HOA. Normally, HOAs ignore things like that, but this time the board actually took it seriously. I had photos of the damage and camera footage of the kids digging in the flower bed. Karen received a citation for property damage and was ordered to reimburse the cost of replacing the plants. She absolutely lost her mind. The next morning, there was a note taped to my mailbox, calling me a petty little tyrant. From that point on, Karen made it her mission to irritate me. She started parking her SUV halfway, across the edge of my driveway whenever she could. If I was outside gardening, she'd suddenly start blasting music from her patio speakers. Sometimes she would stand in her yard, loudly complaining to other neighbors about people who hate children. The HOA complaints started too. Karen filed reports about everything she could think of. My trash cans were out too long after pickup. My porch light was too bright. My hedge was slightly over the height limit. Every single complaint was dismissed, which only made her angrier. After a few months, things escalated. My packages started disappearing. At first, I thought it was random porch theft. A delivery box would arrive, and when I got home, it was gone. Then it happened again, and again. That's when I checked my cameras. The footage showed Karen walking over from her house about 15 minutes after each delivery. She'd look around casually, pick up the package, and walk back to her house like it belonged to her. But it didn't stop with the porch. One afternoon, I watched her walk straight up to my mailbox. She opened it, took out the stack of letters, flipped through them right there on the sidewalk, and tucked several envelopes under her arm before going back home. That was the moment I stopped thinking of it as a neighbor dispute. I called the police. The officer who responded watched the footage carefully and nodded. "That's mail theft," he said, "which means this is federal." He gave me the number for the U.S. Postal Inspection Service. Within a few days, a postal inspector contacted me. He explained that stealing mail, even taking letters from someone else's mailbox, is a federal crime. They take it extremely seriously. He asked if I'd be willing to help with a controlled delivery. A week later, a package arrived on my porch that looked completely normal. Inside was a GPS tracker and some marked contents. Then we waited. Karen didn't disappoint. About 10 minutes after the delivery truck left, she walked up to my porch again. She glanced toward the street, picked up the package, and tucked it under her arm. Then she walked straight to her house. She didn't even make it inside. 2 unmarked cars rolled up and 3 postal inspectors stepped out. They stopped her right on the walkway. The look on her face when they identified themselves was almost surreal. Apparently, she had no idea how serious mail theft actually was, and it got worse for her very quickly. The investigators didn't just stop with the package she had taken that day. They started looking at reports from other homes nearby. Turns out I wasn't the only person she'd been stealing from. Karen had been going to multiple mailboxes up and down the street, pulling letters out and grabbing packages from porches. Several neighbors realized missing deliveries suddenly made sense. One of the envelopes she stole turned out to be a court summons, intended for another resident. That brought the county prosecutor into the case. Between the mailbox thefts, the stolen packages, and the intercepted legal mail. Karen found herself facing multiple federal charges. The trial itself didn't take long. The video footage from my cameras was clear. The postal inspectors had surveillance from the sting operation. Several neighbors testified about missing mail. Karen tried to argue she thought the packages had been delivered to the wrong address. The judge didn't buy it for a second. She was convicted of mail theft and fined $250,000, along with 3 years of federal probation, because she had interfered with official court documents. The county court also imposed house arrest as part of the additional charges. The fallout didn't end there. Karen's husband didn't even make it through the trial before he started distancing himself. At first, he claimed he had no idea what she'd been doing, which might actually have been true. He worked long hours and traveled frequently for work, and neighbors said he looked genuinely stunned the day the postal inspectors showed up. But the moment the case became public, things in their house changed fast. The shouting started almost immediately. More than one neighbor heard arguments spilling out onto the driveway late at night. Apparently, Karen tried to blame everyone else, the HOA, the neighbors, even me, for provoking her into the situation. Her husband wasn't buying it. About a month after the conviction, a moving truck showed up. He packed up his things and left. Later, we learned he had filed for legal separation and eventually divorce. According to another neighbor who stayed friendly with him, the financial penalties and legal trouble were simply more than he was willing to tie himself to. She tried to go after him for child support, but he demanded a paternity test which revealed the children were not his. Karen's lovers all refused to contact her, and she couldn't figure out who the baby daddies were. Between the federal fine, the legal fees, and the house arrest conditions, Karen's life had shrunk dramatically. The once very loud and very opinionated neighbor rarely stepped outside anymore except when required. Her kids stopped running around the neighborhood. And the flower bed? It finally had some peace and quiet. The roses grew back just fine. And nobody in the neighborhood touches anyone else's mailbox anymore.